Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Sorry, I was just taking care of some housekeeping matters and getting everyone admitted and muted here. We'll get started in just one moment. All right, very good. All right, good afternoon to everyone. My name is Chairman Marissa Gillette. I'm joined virtually today by my colleagues, the newly elected Vice Chairman David Arconti and Commissioner Michael Karen. So we are here this afternoon for a public comment hearing in docket number 250403, which is the joint application of the Aquarion Water Authority, South Central Connecticut Regional Water Authority, and Eversource Energy for approval of a change of control. I want to thank everyone in advance. We have quite a number of folks who have expressed interest in participating in this afternoon's public comment hearing, including a number of folks who probably are new or newer to PURA and our processes. So I am going to take a few moments at the outset just to explain a little bit about what's going on this afternoon before inviting the applicants or the petitioners to make a brief statement, and then we'll immediately turn to receive public comment following that. So if this is your first time participating in a PURA proceeding, I want to thank you on behalf of my colleagues and I and welcome you to this afternoon's proceeding. We do like to take the opportunity to have these public comment hearings in dockets such as this. We often go out into the community and we'll hold hearings like this for rate case applications. So we hope that this is not your last time participating in a PURA proceeding. If it is your first time, if it's not, welcome back. I know there are a number of elected officials who were able to participate in PURA's Tropical Storm Isaias hearings a number of years ago. So I want to welcome those of you back and thank you in advance for participating today. So the purpose of today's hearing before PURA is to receive public comment from members of the public. So PURA, the commissioners, we have staff on the line as well. Today, PURA itself, meaning the commissioners and decisional staff, will not be engaging in questioning or answering questions. Rather, we are here today to hear from you, elected officials, members of the public, et cetera. And what we hope to do is hear your questions, concerns that you support, opposition, what have you, regarding the application pending before us. PURA will hold an evidentiary hearing later this summer. And so today we'll be using comments that we hear to inform our preparations for that hearing later this summer. So feel free to pose your comments in the form of a question, but please know that we are not in a position to respond today, but rather we'll be taking note of that. In addition to that, when I say take note, we will do that in a couple of ways. We are recording today's public hearing. It will be displayed on our YouTube channel. In addition, we have a court reporter with us this afternoon who will transcribe the comments, and it will become part of the record in that way. So when I do call on you, if you could please make sure that your name is legible in your Zoom box, and that you please identify yourself by name and affiliation so that we can properly reflect that in the transcript for today's proceeding. Additionally, please refrain from using the chat function. That is not part of the official record. And so if you do have comments, we ask that you provide them verbally today. Lastly, if you are not comfortable providing a verbal comment or you would like to elaborate at a later date, we do leave open the opportunity to receive public comments in writing. So the way to do that is to email your comments to PURA's executive secretary and reference docket number 250403, or reference the Aquarion sale, and it will help you get that into the right location. So if you have a colleague or a constituent, et cetera, that was not able to be present today and would like to provide comment, they can do so in the form of writing as well. So I think those are the opening housekeeping matters. I'll recap just a little bit of that and next steps at the conclusion of today's public comment hearing. If you're not able to stay for the whole proceeding today and you'd like to exit after you make your public comment, please feel free. So again, I'm going to first turn to the petitioners who I understand have a brief statement. Then I have a list of speakers that we've developed. I think there are a number of elected officials who have asked to be heard and other participants in the proceeding. And then after we exhaust that list, I will turn to taking raised hands from others in the virtual waiting room. So with that, if I could invite the petitioners, I see several of you, if you could take yourselves off mute and identify yourselves and please move forward with your statement.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioner. One, I would say point to note, both, I would say my colleague Rochelle and I are sitting in the same room. So you will see Rochelle Kowalski kind of, I would say, displayed on the screen, but it's going to be two of us. And I will kind of, I would say, go on record and let my name kind of be read out. But if there are, I would say, questions regarding who I am, even though you're going to see on the screen the same name, I can still clarify later on. So with that, I will go into the opening remarks. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sunny Lakshmi Narayanan, and I am the interim president and CEO of the Aquarion Water Authority, or AWA, and South Central Connecticut Regional Water Authority, or RWA. With me is Rochelle Kowalski, the Senior Vice President, Chief Financial Officer, and Head of Corporate Development of the AWA and RWA, and Lucy Texera, who is the President and Chief Operating Officer at the Aquarion Water Company. On behalf of all the joint petitioners, first, we would like to thank PURA for hosting today's public comment hearing. And also, we would like to thank all the participants for taking time this afternoon to be here, as well as participate with your comments. With that, I'll just turn over to my colleague, Lucy Texera, who will just give a brief introduction, and I'll join back again.
Thank you, Sunny. Good afternoon, everyone. As background, in April, the joint petitioners filed a request for approval of a change of control of Aquarion Company, including Aquarion Water Company of Connecticut and the Torrington Water Company. Aquarion is the water service provider to customers in 59 municipalities in the state of Connecticut. Aquarion is currently owned by Eversource Energy. And after a competitive bidding process, Eversource agreed to sell Aquarion to the Aquarion Water Authority, or AWA, which is a not-for-profit public corporation and political subdivision of the state of Connecticut. The request in this proceeding is for the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority, or PURA, to approve the sale of Aquarion's Connecticut operations from Eversource to the AWA. This will result in a change of control of Aquarion such that the AWA will become the owner and parent company of Aquarion and its operating subsidiaries instead of Eversource. I'll turn this back over to Sunny, which will give you some background on AWA.
Thank you, Lucy. First, I would like to introduce and talk a bit more about who the AWA is. The AWA is a new public corporation specifically created by the Connecticut legislature last summer to submit a competitive bid to own and operate Aquarion as a water authority. Although the AWA is new, you may be familiar with the AWA's affiliate, the South Central Connecticut Regional Water Authority, or RWA. The RWA has successfully operated a water company in Connecticut for 45 years, since its creation in January of 1980. Through its predecessor, the New Haven Water Company, the RWA has provided water and water services to Connecticut residents and businesses continuously since 1849 for more than 175 years. The RWA's experience and expertise demonstrates the benefits of public ownership, local control, municipal representation, and organizational stability of a water company. The Connecticut legislature created the Aquarion Water Authority as an entity that will operate alongside the RWA with the same governance structure, powers, and duties as the RWA. The AWA's ownership of Aquarion will benefit significantly from working alongside the RWA as a sister utility and leveraging the deep experience of RWA in successfully operating an award-winning water authority in Connecticut. The petition filed with PURA provides detailed information regarding the AWA's financial, technological, and managerial suitability and responsibility to become the owner and parent company of Aquarion. Today, we would like to highlight a few key points about this transaction that demonstrate why the AWA's acquisition of Aquarion is in the public interest. At this point, let me turn things over to my colleague, Rochelle Kowalski.
Thank you, Sunny. And hello, everyone. Thank you for allowing us time to provide a brief overview of the AWA transaction before we hear from you all. With the approval of this transaction, Aquarion's longstanding and historical successful operation and employees will transfer over to AWA ownership. The AWA, through Aquarion's history and experience and RWA's expertise and support, will continue to provide safe, adequate, and reliable water service to the public through Aquarion's plant equipment and manner of operation. Both Aquarion and the RWA are well known for their exemplary water quality, customer service, environmental stewardship, strong emergency response efforts, and affordable water rates. The change of control will be seamless to Aquarion's Connecticut customers. As a result of this transaction, Aquarion customers, employees, and communities in the state of Connecticut will benefit from increased opportunities. For example, the AWA's acquisition of Aquarion will benefit the public because it will provide for a local representation for the municipalities that Aquarion serves. Furthermore, it will allow for two well-regarded local entities with complementary business profiles to share best practices, technical expertise, and career opportunities for its employees, as well as ensure long-term local control of Aquarion. In addition, at acquisition, Aquarion customers will continue to pay current rates and charges under AWA's ownership as they do under Eversource's ownership. There is no intention to blend rates between AWA and RWA. The AWA rates for Aquarion will continue to be set as a separate entity. Financially, the change of control will result in a lower cost of capital for investments in infrastructure improvements because the AWA will be able to issue tax-exempt debt, which will help to keep future rates lower than under the current ownership structure. And Aquarion will benefit from both economies of scale and other benefits under the authority structure. The AWA's ownership of Aquarion will be seamless for municipalities who will benefit from more direct representation over Aquarion's operations. Transforming Aquarion into a regional water authority will ensure that water services remain in public hands and that AWA is directly accountable to the communities it serves. Among other benefits, each of the 59 cities and towns receiving water service from Aquarion under AWA's ownership will have a representative on the Aquarion Regional Water District's Representative Policy Board. The Aquarion Regional Water District Representative Policy Board, or RPB, will review and approve various actions of the AWA, including just and equitable rates and charges. This means that each city and town within the Aquarion Regional Water District will directly have a say in setting the AWA rates and what customers pay. Moreover, Aquarion's municipalities will experience continuity through AWA's payment in lieu of taxes or a pilot to the communities in AWA's service territory. At the time of acquisition, pilot payments will reflect the same level of real and personal property payments made to communities. For real property, pilot mirrors property tax. There is no difference in the mill rates, and pilot is paid on existing real property unless it's sold. While pilot is also paid on newly acquired real property, pilot is not paid on post-acquisition real property improvements. Additionally, the AWA will pay pilot on personal property at the time of acquisition, and prospectively, pilot will be adjusted for water distribution pipe additions and retirements. In closing, we have provided a brief overview of what customers and communities can expect as a result of the transaction, and have shared a few points of why AWA's acquisition of Aquarion is in the public interest. That includes local ownership and representation, long-term ownership and stability for Aquarion customers and employees, lower cost of capital for infrastructure investment, and economies of scale related to the AWA and RWA water systems, to name a few. Thank you again for joining us today and for participating in this important opportunity for public comment. We look forward to your comments. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we will turn next to speaker list that we've developed. And I believe the first step will be Senator Tony Hwang, please.
Good afternoon to all the members of the Connecticut PURA. It's a hot day out there. I'm State Senator Tony Hwang, and I want to comment on docket number 25-0403. I want to thank you for the opportunity to submit testimony regarding the proposed sale of Aquarion Water Company, currently owned by Eversource, to the Regional Water Authority, and obviously the new entity that was cited here. I want to oppose this transaction and the flawed legislative process and the regulatory process that has enabled this process to be where we are right now. I think the first point was, as a state senator, the real lack of transparency in the legislative process that has enabled this transaction to be discussed. This sale was quietly authorized during the June 2024 special session through an omnibus bill, which is Public Act 24-1, with no standalone debate or public hearing on this issue. I voted against this bill due to its lack of transparency, public scrutiny, and informed deliberation. This legislative maneuver effectively bypassed a truly open and transparent government process and denied residents, stakeholders, and legislators the opportunity to properly engage on this matter of real significant public consequence. A transaction involving a vital public resource such as water, essential to life, public health, and environmental sustainability, truly demands a full, transparent, and participatory review process. I'm glad at least we're finally getting a chance to present that to you, to PURA, and thank you. But these kind of public interests must be on the forefront, not buried with a rushed legislative package. So for me, the lack of transparency in the legislative process is deeply troubling. Number two, I think my concern is it's a threat to municipal revenue from watershed lands. This sale jeopardizes revenue for our municipalities derived from property taxes on watershed land currently under Aquarion ownership. RWA is a quasi-public authority with very different tax obligations. If they should acquire these land, towns across Connecticut, especially within my district, faces a real risk of losing critical tax revenue that funds education, infrastructure, and emergency services. And I think you'll hear that from many of the municipal leaders that will be voicing their concern. And the stability of our community should not be sacrificed without real detailed impact analysis, mitigation plans, and a real process. Again, lacking process transparency, many of our municipalities are deeply concerned about the potential loss of revenue because this new entity, as it's established, will not be obligated to pay property tax. And number three, the loss of regulatory oversight and consumer accountability. As I mentioned, the first two processes, we did not have that transparency. We did not have that accountability. And the process was deeply flawed and dare I say, incomplete. And perhaps the most troubling aspect of this sale would remove the new entity from oversight by the Public Utility Regulatory Authority, the very body that is listening to this conversation, listening to this deliberation. If this same transaction was to have occurred through Section 1, a legislative lack of transparency and accountability, and 2, impact to our municipalities, we would no longer have the pure regulatory review that is entailed today. And for me, that is deeply troubling because Pure plays a critical role in protecting consumers, ensuring that rate increases are justified, fair, and subject to public input. This new entity would no longer have their rate setting be reviewed by Pura, which protects our consumers, but instead by their elected board of that entity. I think by exempting RWA from this oversight, we really open the door to unchecked water rates hikes, eroding accountability, transparency, and consumer protection, evident by what has already transpired in the first section of the legislative process. So in conclusion, and a real urgent call to action, and I hope you'll hear from many of the municipal leaders that feel that degree of frustration and lacking transparency and process. And I'm grateful that we at least have this regulatory review under PURA. But ultimately, if this was to go through in a sale transaction and the Regional Water Authority through its new entity, we would no longer be afforded that opportunity to protect the consumer and representation. So again, for these reasons, I respectfully and emphatically urge the rejection of this transaction at a minimum. I think it must be subject to a full public and transparent review process to safeguard our ratepayers, municipal revenue, and environmental stewardship and public accountability. I thank you for your time and an opportunity, and truly, I'm grateful that Pure has had a chance to review this and have a regulatory review, because the new entity, should it be approved, would no longer be forth and transparent and accountable to the process that we're undergoing today. I'd be happy to take any questions from the commissioners, and thank you for your work.
Thank you so much for your comments, Senator. And I believe the next individual on our list this afternoon is also a state senator. I believe we have Senator Ryan Fazio with us.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the Pure Commissioners for your time and hearing this very important issue before our state currently. My name is Ryan Fazio. I'm a state senator representing the 36th district, which is Greenwich, Stanford, and New Canaan. We're obviously served by the Aquarion Water Company currently. And I and so many of our local officials and state officials, like Senator Huang, have been expressing deep concern about the potential for a Aquarion sale to the South Central Connecticut Water Authority for over a year now. The discussion we're having before PURA today is a discussion that we should have had before the legislature over many months. Instead, this policy change was pushed through the state legislature on basically a couple days' notice, which has multi-billion-dollar effect on our state economy and the region that so many of us serve in Western Connecticut. We know that there are structural differences between how the Regional Water Authority and Aquarion operate, and thus the consequences to consumers. For instance, we know that the water rates for Aquarion water customers are 30% or more, or for Regional Water Authority customers are something like 30% or more above where they are for Aquarion water customers. We know that Regional Water Authority customers don't have the benefit of an independent, outside, well-resourced authority regulator like PURA setting rates and vetting what the cost structure is of the utilities that are being operated. Yes, a policy board provides some check, but it just simply doesn't have the sophistication, the resources, and the independence that a Public Utilities Commission like PURA has when regulating multi-billion-dollar entities. We know that the labor structure and costs of the Regional Water Authority lends itself to a much higher cost than where Aquarion is. We know that this ultimate transaction did not have public support from the localities it will be serving, with several first selectmen and mayors speaking out, in addition to other local leaders, against the bill, the policy change when it happened. Listen, I hope that my concerns about this are wrong if indeed the transaction goes through. But I would simply say this: I urge PURA and its commissioners to use any legal tool at its disposal to vet and push back on any transaction that is being proposed, because all the evidence suggests that this will lead to higher costs and potentially worse service and potentially worse governance and oversight for the new potential Aquarion Water Authority customers in Western Connecticut. There are many questions that should have been answered through a rigorous process of public debate and an open legislative process, rather than this policy change being pushed down in a over 100-page bill with only a couple days notice in a special session last summer, in addition to having major concerns about the policy outcomes. Many of our leaders are concerned about the process which this was done in. And so, that aside, we ask PURA, please do use every tool at your legal disposal to vet and push back on this transaction if all the evidence shows, in fact, that that's what you should be doing on behalf of hundreds of thousands of water customers in Western Connecticut and beyond. Thank you for your time, commissioners, and I'm happy to take any questions if you need.
Thank you so much for your comments, Senator. We'll enter those into the record. At this time, I would like to invite Representative Constantine to provide comments.
Hi. Listen, I've just heard a lot from our three selectmen who are also on this phone call, really regarding the process and the representation that they would have on this on the newly formed water authority. And I'd really love to hear from them also. Sorry, I was just here to listen. I wanted to hear what everyone had to say, but
I'm so sorry.
no, that's okay. But I am sure they will all detail mainly the representation regarding the board, and then also the financing aspect, because the financing will be carried by the customers of our towns. So that's been a huge concern. Those have been the two huge concerns that I've heard from everybody that's called.
Thank you so much. Speaking of those first select people and mayors, we'll turn to them next, and I have First Selectman Gerber from Fairfield.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I think many of the town CEOs have the same concerns. And just, from my point of view, I just don't think some of the great questions that were asked by, the interrogatory questions were not answered that I could see. It's impossible to see how RWA is going to pay off the debt without a significant negative impact on Aquarion and the Aquarion customers. Just going through Aquarian Eversource's 10Ks, trying to figure out what the bottom line of Aquarion's water segment is, and it looks like Aquarion makes about $30 to $40 million a year. The debt for this transaction will almost certainly put Aquarion in the red, and it's impossible for me to see how the debt service can be paid, and I feel like RWA's made some statements that there will be no increase in rates, but I don't believe from the cash flows that I can see and the income of Aquarion that I mean that seems like an empty statement. That rates will have to go up substantially, and they haven't proven. I can't see anything responses. This is one of the interrogatory questions was, how will you repay the debt? I haven't seen an answer to that. We're talking about $2.4 billion of debt, which will be, a significant amount of money in addition to the requirement, for Aquarion to continue to finance its infrastructure repairs and build out, which in past years has been hundreds of millions of dollars. It's impossible to see how that's going to continue to happen and repay the debt without a really, really major increase in rates. So I don't think this should be approved until RWA has put pen to paper and proven. They talk about their models and they say in their filing, "Hey, we've modeled this and everything looks great, and we're gonna have cost savings from purchasing power." I mean, that just seems like a stretch, and they haven't proven it out from what I can see. They need to put it on paper so that we can all transparently see where those, how much those savings are. There'll have to be a lot of savings. There's not room in this business line to pay off, $100 million to $200 million of debt service per year. And if there is, and I'm mistaken, it's the onus should be on RWA to show how that's going to happen. There must be some very aggressive assumptions that we haven't seen about savings. I understand, I just made some pretty basic assumptions about interest rates, having just been through a municipal bond, debt offering, and I don't know if RWA is going to do better in their bond offering than the town of Fairfield, which is AAA rated. And we just were able to get financing at rates of about under 4%. I don't know what RWA thinks they can do or is planning on getting, but either way, just amortize, even if it's lower than that, just amortizing off $2.4 million of debt, requires a lot of cash flow, which this business segment really doesn't have. So can we force RWA to show us how they're going to pay for this debt without raising rates? And it's easy to say that they're not going to raise rates because they're going to put in place sort of this big board with people who aren't experts, and that board is going to be faced with either raising rates or bankruptcy, and they can say, "Well, we didn't do it. That's the new board that did it." The new board, won't want to have a bankrupt water company on its hands, and they'll be boxed in. They'll have to raise rates. So anyway, that's my main concern. I think they deserve the opportunity to present the plan in detail, and they haven't done it. I don't know why. And it really is kind of it's a big missing piece of this proposal. And if rates end up having to double or triple, we're all going to be looking back and saying, well, this was pretty obvious an obvious problem that no one should have kept this deal from happening. And I don't want to be in that position in 4 or 5 years of looking like a chump. And I don't think any of us do. So let's ask the questions, let's get the answers. I don't really think there are any answers because, Finance 101, there's a finite amount of cash flow and income from Aquarion that really cannot support this level of debt. And thank you so much for allowing me to speak, Commissioner Gillette. And yeah, and I am also concerned. Was that Senator Fazio who spoke before me? I just logged in,
Yes,
but I think I heard him say, yeah, this is an unwieldy board structure. I've actually read Commissioner Gillette's. I read your last rate. You reviewed the rate case that Aquarion made a couple of years ago. So detailed, so technical. This board will not have that level of expertise, regulatory expertise, to make those types of you do that kind of research and make those types of judgments, and that's very concerning. We're going to be at the mercy, really, of lay people, and that's not where you want to be with your water. So I am concerned about that as well. Thank you.
thank you. Next, we'll turn to First Selectwoman Carlson.
Thank you, commissioners. I'm Deanna Carlson, First Selectman for the town of New Canaan, and I speak today on behalf of the residents of New Canaan and thousands of Aquarion customers across Connecticut. We are deeply concerned about the proposed sale of Aquarion to the Regional Water Authority. While New Canaan has other concerns with this transaction, I'd like to focus my remarks on concerns with the proposed governance of the combined entity and leave it to my colleagues in other communities to discuss other issues. The current RWA governance model is structurally flawed for this acquisition. The proposed governance structure is complicated and favors RWA towns over Aquarion towns. Oversight for rates, budgets, and capital spending for Aquarion towns will become the responsibility of a new 60-member AWA representative policy board. This will be the second largest legislative body in the state after the Connecticut House of Representatives, and larger than the Connecticut State Senate. It is impossible to fathom how this enormous body can function in place of PURA's meaningful oversight. Most concerning is the fact that RWA will control the business and policy decisions of our communities, which are not in the RWA district. Despite Aquarion serving approximately 200,000 more customers than RWA's current base, and despite the fact that there are 59 towns in the Aquarion Regional Water District and only 20 towns in the RWA district, under the proposed model, Aquarion's representation on the 11-member expanded authority board would be smaller than RWA's. The current proposed structure gives AWA 5 seats and RWA 6 seats. If the expanded authority board membership was proportional, the RWA would appoint 4 members and the AWA would appoint 7 members. The result of the proposed structure is fundamentally inequitable, where a minority customer base retains control over a majority's water future. Water is an essential public resource. Any transfer of control must ensure fair, transparent, and proportional representation. As proposed, this transaction disempowers Aquarion communities and introduces real risk to service, investment priorities, and accountability. Business and policy decisions relating to this crucial component of my town's infrastructure should not be made by RWA representatives who have no interest in our communities. We respectfully urge PURA to reject this sale unless governance is restructured to reflect the customer base it intends to serve. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to invite First Selectman Marconi.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'd like to state that I'm in total agreement with everything that has been stated thus far on the record. Senator Wong, Senator Fazio, my colleagues, Mr. Gerber, Ms. Carlson from New Canaan, we are all together on this. And I think that's a very important point to make to Pura, that this is not just one community or one entity that's objecting. We are in concert on this, and all of the points being made this afternoon represent all of our concerns. So hopefully Pura will take that into consideration when thinking about this. As Ms. Carlson focused on the structure of the new entity and the unfairness of the number of municipalities and how it's represented, I'm going to focus my comments on the pilot program that's referenced in the statute. By law, Connecticut is supposed to pay 45% of what have been owed on generally state-owned properties. And the amount is capped by state appropriations. Now, in Ridgefield, Aquarion pays $365,000 in property taxes. If this is converted to a pilot, what guarantees are there that this amount will not be decreased to the 45%? And I'm going to give you an example, and it's going to show my age, and I apologize for that. But many years ago, the state of Connecticut, from an economic development perspective, decided not to tax manufacturers on their equipment, and we were no longer allowed to do so, with the promise that a pilot would be paid. That pilot started off at a relatively okay amount. It was a reduction, but we accepted it. And each succeeding year, that amount continued to drop to the point where MM&E, machinery, manufacturers, machinery, and equipment no longer exists, nor are we allowed to tax any of those entities on their equipment, resulting in millions and millions of lost revenue for municipalities. As we look forward to a pilot or this new entity, what is to preclude that entity from going back to the legislature to adjust anything in the statute? They have the liberty to do so, but specifically to the pilot. And where are we then to make up those revenues? This is a continuation of a trend that has taken place. And I'll be very honest with you. Anytime anything happens in Hartford, Fairfield County takes the hit. And although we are responsible for a majority of the revenues that go into the state coffers, especially with the income tax, not to mention the conveyance taxes that are going on, we continue to get less and less. And this is another way of reaching into Western Connecticut to grab some money to pull back to the east and help subsidize rates that are in the regional water company system now. Those rates, I've been told, are about $20 per month higher than what we pay in Western Connecticut. Our service has been excellent with Aquarion. We have an opportunity with Pura in the rate applications that come through on a regular basis. However, in this new entity, Pura will be out of it completely. Who are we to go to? As you heard Ms. Carlson say, we will not have the representation. We will not have the ability to argue, to debate, to oppose. And that's simply wrong. Connecticut shouldn't work that way. There should be, as Senator Wong said, an open, transparent process where we have a voice. And if Pura is going to be cut out of the approval process, I am 100% opposed. And I am representing 25,000 people in Ridgefield that would agree with me that we oppose any kind of restructure that follows this line as outlined in the current agreement. So please, again, everything that's been said, I agree with. The pilot is a mistake we're going to lose, and I hope you take that into consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments, sir. Next, I would like to invite the first select woman of the town of Westport, First Select Woman Tooker.
Hi there, good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Thank you, commissioners, for giving us a chance and giving us an opportunity to make some comments regarding this proposed sale of Aquarion Water Company. My name is Jen Tooker, and I am Westport's first select woman. And I've spoken against this sale many times. And so I am pleased to be able to share some of my thoughts with you here today. There are many issues which are concerning, as stated by my peers, my fellow CEOs from Ridgefield, New Canaan, and Fairfield, and also by Senators Wong and Fazio. They range from the legislative process, which led us here, to the question of how will this transaction be financed and the inevitable rate increase customers will see, to the inadequacy of the pilot programs and the pilot payments, drastically affecting local property taxes, to the governance structure of the new entity, and the effects this transaction will have on customer service and infrastructure investment. But what I want to focus on with my comments is the process by which rates will be determined. AWA will not be under the supervision of you, of PURA, as has been stated many times in the last half hour. It will be under the supervision of the AWA Representative Policy Board. PURA has proven to be an effective and, most importantly, independent guardian for ratepayers overseeing Aquarion. That independent oversight will no longer exist under the proposed structure. And just to be clear, the independent PURA oversight of Aquarion has approved rate increases over the last 10 years of 8.5%. Compare that to RWA's Representative Policy Board, which has approved a 40.2% rate increase in the same 10 years. As a result, RWA's average monthly rate is $64.66 versus Aquarion's average monthly rate of $44.71. That really is my main point. The track record on this form of governance is not good. Under this system, with no independent regulatory oversight, there will be no safeguard or regulatory review, and rates will increase at a level that will be punitive to the customer at a time when Connecticut residents, business owners, and municipalities simply can't afford it. The affordability crisis in Connecticut is real, and this proposed sale and the proposed structure of this entity going forward will just add to it. So I ask you, please reconsider this transaction. Please reject this transaction as structured. And again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments and for your time. Next, I would like to invite the Mayor of Stratford. I see Mayor Hoydick.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Gillette and Commissioners Karen and Arconti. I would like to join my fellow CEOs in thanking you for hosting this hearing and allowing us to speak on the potential South Central Regional Water Authority intend to acquire Aquarion Water Company. This potential acquisition of AWC is of critical significance to our community and our ratepayers. And Aquarion is subject to regulatory oversight regarding rates and services by PURA. And should AWC be sold to the Regional Water Authority, regulation of rates and services would be overseen by the Representative Policy Board, or RPB. Based on my understanding of the proposed governance structure, the RPB's votes would be weighted based on a formula that considers the number of customers and the land owned in each municipality. Furthermore, the current RWA Authority Board, which functions as the Board of Directors, would be expanded to an 11-person board with 6 appointments on RWA on the RPB and 5 appointments on the newly established AWA. The structure raises several concerns as communities within the AWA would be subordinate to the decision-making of those in the current South Central Regional Water Authority District. Given that such a large financial transaction is occurring, I would need to ensure that the costs of this acquisition are not passed on to the ratepayers within my community and that service remains a paramount priority. I was in the House of Representatives in the Energy and Technology Committee when CRRA and MIRA failed in their operations. I remember the extensively large boards that were tasked to make management policy and rate setting decisions. A 60-member RPB is inordinately large and cumbersome. And while inviting participants to the table, which is great, it makes it awkward operational structure and one that I wouldn't recommend based on our failed past history. This policy board would not be representative of the communities that would make up AWA, and this proposal reeks of control and steering. And as the adjudicators of this transaction, I would hope PURA would rule on a more equitable governance. In addition to my questions regarding representation, the town of Stratford receives approximately $600,000 in annual property taxes from AWA. RWA, however, only pays payment in lieu of properties to the municipalities within their district, which does not include for any improvements on the land. Any loss of property tax revenue would have a negative impact on municipal operations. How will RWA ensure that the pilot is paid, and how would it be equal to the property taxes currently be collected from Aquarion Water? Pilot is not the same as property taxes. RWA's recent history of pilot payments shows a decrease of 0.1%, while the assets they've increased have been subject to a property tax that would have been by 2.2%. For a municipality, along with the rates goes the hydrant services and maintenance costs, as well as the infrastructure that provides water to all of our residents and businesses. I'm concerned about the financing model of this transaction and how the debt would be borne by the ratepayers of the future. Based on the amendments to the RWA charter completed in the June 24 special session, the acquisition premium will be repaid by ratepayers. This will place a tremendous pressure on rates. I thank you for your time, for listening, and for your consideration in protecting the ratepayers of Connecticut, as you have done in the past. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Next on my list, I have Trumbull's first select person. I believe we have first select person Tessero. I'm butchering your last name, aren't I?
It's okay. That's not unusual. It's Tesoro, first elected Tesoro, but thank you very much. So I do want to thank the PURA commissioners for the opportunity to speak on this issue that is of great importance to citizens of Trumbull concerning the change in control of Aquarion Water Company to the Aquarion Water Authority. And I will echo also the comments that have been made by the previous speakers. I also agree with all of them, and I will be repeating some of the things that have been said. So I will try to be as quick as I can. Aquarion Water Company owns several properties in Trumbull and of course serves their Trumbull customers. On behalf of the citizens of my town, my concerns fall into two major categories. Number one, the fiscal impact that this potential change in control will have on our town finances. And two, the impact on our ratepayers that live or do business in Trumbull. Regarding the fiscal impact to Trumbull, as we've heard, RWA pays pilot payments to municipalities within their district. If this change of control occurs, is there a guarantee that the pilot will be the same as the taxes presently being paid to Trumbull by Aquarion? Any loss of this revenue will have a negative impact on both our businesses and residents. It's my understanding that the loss of tax revenues may not be immediate, but over time, these losses could be significant. Regarding our ratepayers, over the last decade, RWA rate increases have been higher than those of Aquarion. What mechanisms will be in place to protect the current Aquarion customers from similar increases? If this change happens, PURA will no longer have oversight responsibility, and the new representative policy board expected to be created will be large and may be weighted unequally among the covered municipalities. Since there will be no oversight from PURA and there are questions about the governance formula, what actual oversight protections will be in place to protect our ratepayers? Will there be municipalities in the service area that will have less of a voice in the decision-making process because they are less populated or do not have the same amount of RWA-owned property? Aquarion has a very good reputation for customer service. What guarantees will they be for our residents and businesses that ensure this high-quality customer service continues? As the chief elected official of Trumbull, it is my job to understand the financial implications of this proposed acquisition and how it will impact Trumbull's financial health and our ratepayers. I look forward to receiving answers to the questions I have raised and others that will be asked in these public hearings. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, First Select Person Tesoro.
Good job.
Good job. Thank you. Okay, I have a number of First Select people that are still in queue, but we have two representatives that have joined, and I see Representative Gresco, who is signed up to speak.
I'm not cutting the line, am I?
Nope, you were earlier in my list, so please go ahead.
Okay, I don't need any more hate mail. Thank you, Commissioner, and fellow former legislators, David, Michael, and all of the first selectmen and mayors of communities. I echo, without getting into too much time, and all of the sentiments as far as tax refund, tax availability for municipalities going forward. But my specific concern is, if this transaction proceeds, what kind of guarantees are there for the protection of the public watershed properties? Right now, Aquarion has these properties, and I just envision the potential scenario of RWA contemplating the sale of some, what I consider open space watershed protection land, in an effort to offset the costs of purchase, which I think should be earmarked by commissioners as part of any type of agreement if this goes forward, in that those watershed lands should be protected. That's what I have to say, and hopefully it will be taken into consideration. And I appreciate the patience and the time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We will enter your comments into the record. I also see Representative Jonathan Steinberg, if you would like to comment, sir. Right. I will come back to Representative Steinberg. Do I have first select person Tony Boucher?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I guess my video is not enabled, so you can't see me, but if you would like to enable it, I'm happy to join. Let's see here. Hi there. Thank you so much, Commissioner Gillette, and for your patience and the opportunity for us to have a voice when we did not have an opportunity to voice our position during this legislative process on a proposal that has wide sweeping effect to all of our towns. I'd like to associate my comments with my distinguished colleagues throughout Fairfield County, and as former colleagues when I was in the state Senate and the state House previously. But as the first selectman of the town of Wilton, representing slightly under 20,000 people who stand to lose over $100,000 worth of property taxes, of course, I also, like all of the other towns, am very concerned about the financial impact on our budget and taxes in our community. The loss of this property tax, even though there's been mention of a pilot that has already been shown to have some questions about receiving full benefit of the loss, is in question. And number two, the loss of voting rights at a 5-6 board that will make the decisions on rates and other policy decisions that puts the vast majority of the customers, as this section of the state would add substantially more customers than currently exist, is an unfair position to be put in. In other words, the minority would be making the decisions for the majority. And thirdly, the increase in fees to the ratepayers, or this new entity could face bankruptcy. And so it stands to reason that we all can see rate increases in the future. And I associate myself with all the positive comments about PURA, you and your leadership as having proper oversight, and the loss of that would be detrimental to all of our towns. Again, I'm not going to repeat in great detail that have already been very well stated, very articulately stated by my colleagues. And you'll note that they are from both sides of the political aisle. This is a nonpartisan position. It is a huge economic decision for our part of the state. So again, I thank you for the opportunity to voice our positions on this bill, and look forward to your decisions going forward. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for your comments. Okay, I have a number of first select persons who were on the list. I'm not seeing them in the queue. So I'm going to turn to, I believe, Mr. Furlot on behalf of Metro Cog. But let me briefly, before I turn the floor over to him, I had the first select person from Litchfield, Darien, Newtown, and Killingworth. So if I'm just missing you in the queue, if you could please locate the raise hand function under the reactions tab at the bottom of the screen. If not, we will open it up to others who can get into the queue using the same process. So the reaction, I guess it's react at the bottom of the screen. You should be able to use the raise hand function, and I will call on you in the order that those hands go up. So Mr. Sheehan demonstrating that for us. So right now I'm going to give it the floor to Mr. Furlot, and then we will turn to the queue after that. We just need to get you unmuted, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
We have the technology. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Gillette, Commissioner Caron, and Commissioner Arconti, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Charles Furlot, and I'm principal of Laurent Maxim Enterprises, which is a management consulting firm. And for 16 years, I was CEO of Aquarion Company up until the end of 2019. I've worked in the regulated utility world for 4 decades and was chairman of an electric utility in Eastern Canada. So the majority of my career, if you will, and I did so in 4 countries. Today, I do represent MetroCog, the Council of Governments, and the towns of Easton, Bridgeport, Fairfield, Monroe, Trumbull, and Stratford. The MetroCog municipalities have over 325,000 residents, some 95,000 acres of land, and Aquarion and MetroCog have more than coexisted well together for decades. And this application is so fundamentally flawed, I am not sure where to begin. I can tell you that in my long career, I probably have been in front of economic regulators between 50 and 100 times, somewhere in between that number, with acquisitions, and was always of the understanding that an acquisition to be approved should have either a net benefit to the customers or do no harm. A rendition of the Hippocratic Oath, if you will. And this application egregiously fails on both counts. And so for several reasons, we oppose the application. But the first objection has to do with the identification of the applicant's positioning of the Aquarion Water Authority as the applicant and the acquiring entity. The Aquarion Water Authority is nothing more than a sleight of hand, if you will, to convince the public that municipalities that Pura's approval is a foregone conclusion. And that Aquarion is somehow in charge of its own fate, and that the RWA recedes in the background as some friendly partner to be. The aggressor here, the acquiring entity, is not the Aquarion Water Authority. That's a piece of fiction. It's orchestrated. The RWA is orchestrating this application and will control Aquarion's asset base if Pura approves the application. The Aquarion Water Authority is simply a piece of enabling legislation which was cooked up in the middle of the night, devoid of public input, and voted on by legislators who were insufficiently informed about what they were voting for. Consider this, please. The Aquarion Water Authority has no assets, physical or financial. It has no profit and loss. It has no balance sheet. Has no employees, although I understand from today that Sonny has appointed himself chief executive officer and his Ms. Kalulowski is the chief financial officer, but there are really no employees. And it does not have control, not now with the RWA board acting for it. not if this is approved after the transaction, when an RWA control board and RWA CEO will run the show and the RWA chief financial officer is in control of the entire financial realm. In short, the application grossly misrepresents the change of control which Pura is asked to approve. Cutting through the smoke and mirrors, it is the New Haven RWA, not Aquarion Water Authority, which will control the Aquarion Water franchise. And yet Aquarion's existing customer base will be asked to shoulder the debt which the RWA has accumulated as a result of this purchase. The RWA of New Haven and Eversource should be directed to resubmit their application to reflect that the RWA is the real party which is acquiring control. Leaving aside that for the moment, we believe that this entire intended transaction is a very bad deal for existing customers and the municipalities it serves. Consider this, please. Notwithstanding regional water authorities' strategic advantage of having access to sovereign debt, the average RWA customer pays some greater than 30% more for water than the average Aquarion customer. Aquarion, as we've already heard, is regulated by Pura, who employ experts in finance and accounting and economics and engineering. The RWA has no such oversight. They essentially apply to themselves for rate relief. And in the last 10 years, RWA's public policy board, this 60-member, however many lay people are on this incredibly large committee, which approves the rate structure, allowed increases totaling 45%. During the same period, Pura allowed Aquarion increases of 8.5%. And yet from the onset, from last summer when this thing took hold, the RWA folks have been out espousing to anybody who would listen, including chief elected officials in this area, that the customer would benefit from the deal. We ask, well, how do you shell out $2.4 billion and not impact rates? Trust us, they say, just hold your nose and approve the deal. The cities and towns served by Aquarion are concerned about property taxes, and rightfully so, and other charges such as hydrant fees. In the past 3 years, RWA pilot payments decreased 0.1%, while they increased the assets subject to assessment by 2.2%. On operating efficiency, on the basis of employee count per number of customers served, Aquarion is a stunning 49% more efficient than the RWA. And on health and safety, RWA has twice as many recordable accidents. I could go on and on the metrics, financial, administrative, service delivery, and on virtually every conceivable metric I could find, the South Central Regional Water Authority is left in the dust. I'll make one last point here, which may sum up the basic problem underlying the regional water company's approach. The newly proposed government entity would have 11 members of the governing board, of which RWA would appoint 6 and Aquarion only 5, even though Aquarion is between 2 and 3 times the size. The majority of board seats instead, an RWA majority on the board, underscores my initial premise that RWA is the acquiring entity. On the other hand, if the RWA is not the acquiring entity and does not seek control, why is it in the transaction at all? Especially since it will be the supposed Aquarion Water Authority which issues bonds to pay the purchase price and then services that debt through Aquarion operations. If it were not RWA's intent to inject itself into Aquarion's business, Eversource could sell directly to the Aquarion Water Authority. This application, finally, Madam Chair, should be rejected on many grounds, and certainly the applicants, the RWA and Eversource, should be sent packing, and they should be able to submit an application which honestly presents the acquiring entity for what and who it is. To suggest that the acquiring entity is this Aquarion Water Authority and not the New Haven Regional Water Authority is disingenuous and, dare I say, deceitful. Shame on you, RWA, and shame on you, Eversource. Thank you for allowing me this time.
Thank you, sir. As promised, we'll turn to the queue. Mr. Sheehan, please.
Great. Chair Gillette, my name is Garrett Sheehan. I'm the President and CEO of the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce. To you and the other commissioners, I appreciate the opportunity to speak just for a couple of minutes. And I think maybe I can add a little bit different perspective. I obviously come at this differently than the towns and elected officials that have already spoken. But in Greater New Haven, work closely with the Regional Water Authority. There's been a lot of vitriol, it seems, talking about the organization so far today. But what I can share with all of you is that this is one of the great organizations that we work with as far as community partners. An organization that is highly engaged in our chamber, definitely as a member, but more engaged than other utilities, other organizations, very supportive of economic development. I've been on visits with towns. It's an organization that is very easy to access, not only for our communities, but also for our businesses. I was with one business owner who told me it was the best experience. They own multiple properties. They said best experience of working with the utility that they have in the state. So, I understand there are a lot of concerns. I do want to make clear that, this is not a Greater New Haven plan to take over the state. And I think that, definitely as this new organization takes hold, there'll probably be a lot of differences, whether it be from urban and rural towns, different types of breakdowns in the organization. But the experience in Greater New Haven has been very strong through our work with the RWA and the investment and commitment that they continue to make to our community. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. Okay, I understand that there's some challenge using the raise hand function. I'm not aware of any setting that we've enabled that prevents it, but we'll keep looking into that. But I do have some folks who have asked to be added to the queue through the chat function. For those of you who are here at the start of the meeting, you heard me say that please refrain from using the chat function because it's not part of the official record. Appreciate that we're using that to try to get into the queue. I think that that's a allowable function. So I'm going to pull the names from there next, and I have Mr. Lemke who has asked to speak.
Thank you so much, Chairman Gillette. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. My name is Mark Lemke. I'm speaking on behalf of Smart Water Connecticut. And over the past 8 years, we analyzed publicly available information regarding permits, a related study to really understand Aquarion's business and product. Let me say right out, I would love to receive RWA's water. It seems to be far better in quality, and it seems to be overall the better company. But let me start by 2 high-level points that I think are key to this transaction. Aquarion's business model is not legitimate. In the past and over the past 20 years, it has become a vehicle for financial engineering at the expense of the public. Rating agency warned that Aquarion needs a strong parent company to maintain its rating. And Pura concluded the same in its recent Supreme Court statement, disallowing, that's what Pura said, $700 million in planned addition Aquarion thought would have devastated the company. And I'm saying this because Pura found no evidence of prudent expenses with Aquarion's business. It means that the authority has long been aware of the problematic issues. In fact, at times enabled Aquarion and misled the public in doing so. To be clear, the evidence for these conclusions have only come to light thanks to Pura's recent effort to increase transparency. The situation around Aquarion is probably getting worse as key documents, what many have said, are not public. The secrecy around this deal is not helpful. 2 concerns I like to add, and they have been raised. I'm sure that the authority is aware that the proposed governance structure will be impossible to provide oversight. With Pura's current oversight model, the public at least recently had some insight into Aquarium's business. The encouraging steps in the past 4 years will all be gone under the new structure. The financing, echoing what has been said, looking at Aquarium's unplanned expenses in the past 10 years, Anderson Road, Emergency Transmission, North Avenue project, Southwest Regional Pipeline, all these expenses were not planned. Under the current financing model, the structure would fail. I conclude, given the current and future challenge for Aquarium's operation, we ask that this transaction should not be approved. At a minimum, Eversource shareholder should be required to contribute at least $500 million to a state water fund. That means that Aquarium shareholder would not lose money on this transaction. The government structure should be redesigned. We need better planning and technical visibility into this deal, and the oversight resources need to be increased. So I ask that following evidence be included in the docket as evidence: Aquarium's recent rate case 2023, the entire North Avenue project, the 2013 rate case, Anderson road accident, and the emergency transmission expenses. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Next, we have Kim Norton, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to let you know, Chairman, that for some reason Zoom's disabled for residents. I don't know. I couldn't raise my hand, but I did use the chat box just for that function. So thank you for letting me speak. Hello, everyone. My name is Kim Norton. I'm an elected member of Town Council, in New Canaan, but I speak today as a private citizen. One of the reasons we bought our home was because it was on town water, and it's regulated and treated for safety by a well-known established company, Aquarion, along with the oversight from PURA. We are concerned that selling our water utility to a regional quasi-government organization, South Central Connecticut Regional Water Authority, known as RWA, compromises the trust we have in the quality of water. Of our water. In addition, for those who live in town or on town water, the sale of our water utilities is likely to result in an increased cost to homeowners, essentially issuing a tax to many residents in a time when budgets are tight and living costs are very high in our state. Just look at our electric bills. Another downside to the sale is that it is likely that the tax revenue New Canaan currently gets from Aquarion will no longer be collected, thus affecting our town budget and mill rate. Another blow to tax-paying residents in a time of high living costs. Lastly, I understand that this new regional quasi-government group would develop a regional board and that towns will get representation based on their population. We are a smaller town compared to Stanford, Norwalk, and Bridgeport, and New Haven, obviously, and we would have less representation. So unknown water quality, higher costs, decreased tax revenue, less representation are all the reasons to block this sale. Taxation without representation has long been a complaint of our American citizens, and it would be happening again right here in 2025. And I am very concerned to hear that this happened in an omnibus bill without a public hearing. So that's a great concern to me. I'm almost done. Water is a vital part of our quality of life, and selling off our water utility has huge negative consequences to New Canaan and its residents. I urge Connecticut Public Utilities Regulatory Authority to block this sale and keep Aquarion Water Company as our water utility provider. We don't have regional government. We don't have regional education. So why make water, which is essential to life, a regional utility in Connecticut? Connecticut is one of the top states to live in the country. Let's keep it that way and keep water in the hands of a trusted established entity, Aquarion, with PURA oversight that serves the residents of New Canaan well. Thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much. If you are also experiencing challenges getting into the queue using the raise hand function, it is acceptable to enter your name into the chat and I will pull from there. Otherwise, the raise hand function should be available under the React tab at the bottom of the screen. And next I saw April Ballou.
Good afternoon, Chairman Gillette. This is Rob Powelson, representing NAWC. It's great to be with you today. I also want to thank Vice Chairman Arconti and Commissioner Karen for this opportunity to present testimony on the application for the change in ownership of the Aquarion Water Company. Just by way of background, the National Association of Water Companies represents the regulated investor-owned utilities here in the U.S., serving over 45 million customers. And we are a 130-year-old trade association. And it's been an honor to work with PURA on a number of different issues relating to our industry. Over the past 20 years, I've had the honor to serve on the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And before that, I was chairman of the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission, where I had regulatory oversight of water and wastewater assets. I've also had the privilege in joining with Commissioner Karen and Commissioner Butowski before him as president of the National Association of Regulatory Commissioners and chaired its Water Committee. It's really an honor to provide comments on this important matter. The change in ownership for Aquarion from an economically regulated, privately owned utility to a regional water authority will have real ramifications for the citizens of Connecticut. As it stated earlier, this transaction is clearly not in the public interest, and I urge you to reject the application. As it was stated earlier, this application is just simply fundamentally flawed. Operating a water utility is a complicated business. As it was expressed earlier, water is life. It's the backbone of our community. It's the only public utility service that customers ingest. Made even more complicated these days is the work underway by the Environmental Protection Agency to focus on emerging contaminants, new cybersecurity regulations, and this all requires extensive investment and expertise to make sure the water utility assets are properly run. Now, there's been so many negative headlines across the U.S., the Flint, Michigan crisis, Newark, New Jersey lead crisis, and the ongoing struggles in communities like Jackson, Mississippi, where 25,000 cases of bottled water had to be delivered to a community because of lack of investment and a poorly run water system. According to the EPA Office of Compliance data, there are 45 million Americans per year who drink water that violates health-based water quality standards. As we sit here today, there are over 1,500 systems in this country that are in serious violation of the Safe Water Drinking Act. I've been very proud of the long-standing track record of the Aquarion Water Company and its management team to not only meet and exceed state and federal drinking water standards. Unfortunately, there's a reality that is not often discussed in this type of transaction, and it goes like this. There's well-documented data that shows that government-run water systems, such as the RWA, are too often not up to the task of meeting the requirements of the Safe Water Drinking Act. A 2018 published study by the National Academy of Science found that private water companies are far less likely to have a health-based drinking water quality violation than utilities owned and operated by local governments. Unfortunately, that pattern is playing out locally as we speak today in Connecticut. According to the Office of Enforcement, RWA was not in compliance with the lead and copper rule for nearly 5 months in calendar year 2021 due to a monitoring and reporting violation. Furthermore, the Safe Water Drinking Act sanitation survey that was conducted in May of 2021 found significant deficiencies in the RWA system. 3 years later, in the SDWA sanitary survey that was conducted in June of 2024, RWA had the same significant deficiencies, suggesting efforts to remedy the issue were not effective. This is all data that has been provided by the Office of Enforcement at the EPA. Now, as of June of this year, the EPA Safe Drinking Water Act Information System, SIDWIS, violation report shows that there were 59 violations for RWA dating back to 2024. Of these violations, 56 of them are listed as major violations. This undervaluing and this underinvestment and lack of compliance is absolutely alarming. We cannot ignore that this potential government-owned system will be run by local officials, and we talked at length about the inefficiencies in the government in the governance model. I'm also deeply troubled as a former regulator that PURA, if they were to approve this transaction, would lose the ability to have economic regulation of this entity. Simply put, a self-governance rate-making model is disastrous for consumers. Now, let's be honest, opponents to our regulated private water model often make vague references about jobs, water quality, customer service, but they really don't provide the empirical evidence to back up these concerns. So I just want to make it very clear that the National Association of Water Companies and our member companies are steadfast in our investment in our employees, our communities, and making sure that our workplaces are safe. And again, meeting and exceeding state and federal drinking water standards. We are also steadfast in our commitment to increasing transparency and customer protections and providing those customers in need with low-income household water assistance programs. You know, what's been often overlooked in this conversation of this transaction is addressing affordability on an ongoing basis. And I want to applaud PURA for your work with your congressional delegation in advocating for funding, permanent funding for the successful low-income household water assistance program. Madam Chair, I appreciate the opportunity to share my views today. I think ensuring continuous access to safe and reliable water at reasonable rates should be of paramount concern to PURA. As mentioned earlier, this transaction in its current form simply doesn't pass the proverbial smell test. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to share my insights and really commend you and your colleagues for developing a record around this proceeding. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Pallison. Okay, again, if you would like to get into the queue to provide public comment, please do so by using the raise hand function under the React tab at the bottom of the screen. Or if that is not working for you, you can enter your name into the chat. I believe I've exhausted my queue at this time. So if you believe that you had signed up and I have not called on you, please don't hesitate to flag that to my attention. Okay, again, last call for anyone who would like to provide public comment this afternoon. Okay, I'm not seeing any other individuals in the queue, in which case I want to, on behalf of my colleagues and I, thank everyone for their robust participation in this afternoon's public comment hearing. For those of you who have just participated in this process for the first time with PURA, I want to thank you especially. In terms of next steps, as I mentioned earlier, PURA will be moving to an evidentiary hearing in this matter scheduled for July 17th at 10 a.m. At that July 17th evidentiary hearing, it is broadcast on YouTube. It is a more formal proceeding than what we engaged in today, where PURA staff, other stakeholders such as the Office of Consumer Counsel, interveners, PURA commissioners have the opportunity to pose questions to the proponents of this application. So if you're interested in that process, feel free to tune into the broadcast of that hearing. Again, it begins at 10 a.m. on July 17th. The remainder of this schedule brings us to a proposed draft decision issued on or around October 22nd, before the PURA commissioners have to consider this for a formal final vote at our open meeting on November 19th. So in other words, there's a number of months ahead of us in this consideration of this transaction. If you were not able to provide comment today or would like to provide additional comment in the future, Mr. Bumpin has put that information into the chat. Again, you can email your comment to PURA, PURA, executive secretary at ct.gov. If you could please reference docket number 250403 or the Aquarion sale, I will make sure that that gets routed to the appropriate docket. All public comments are available for public inspection through our case management system, and PURA's continued record development will be available on that public-facing case management system as well. So with that, we will adjourn and wish everyone a good rest of the day.